guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're going to be talking about drill bits. Now this week's show is more for the beginners of woodworking and the people who are just getting into it, but they're not really sure because there are so many different types of drill bits and it can be a little overwhelming. Now, what do you use for fine woodworking? What do you use for, say, construction type of work? There's a big difference between the drill bits, and if you're a seasoned woodworker, you may not be interested in today's show, but I'm sure that there are plenty of them out there who are just beginning in our fantastic hobby and are interested in the different types of drill bits, and that's who this show is aimed at today, to help those who might have a little bit of confusion about the different types of bits. So if you're not interested in the show, thanks for tuning in for this amount, and I'll see you next week. But for those of you who are interested, let's get into the different types of drill bits. Now, when it comes to drill bits, there are many different types, from masonry to Forstner, twist bits, more twist bits, spade bits, auger bits. What do you use? Well, I guess it really depends on the project. But what we're going to do is we're going to start off by talking about your regular run-of-the-mill twist bit. Now, with your regular twist bits, I've got a large one here so that hopefully you can see. There is really not much to them. You have your flutes along here, which help to remove the material from the hole as it's being drilled. You have your cutting edge up here, which, depending on what purpose you'd like to use it for, you can grind at specific angles. If you're interested in how to sharpen these, there is a video on my channel here using the Drill Doctor to sharpen, and I demonstrate its use. As far as using a twist bit for woodworking, my personal preference is I wouldn't recommend it. And the reason for that is they're very susceptible to tear out both on the top surface and the lower surface of the stock. And the reason for that is they are aggressive. This cutting edge really grabs and it really likes to tear into the wood. And for that reason, whether they be a regular HSS or whether they be like a titanium coated like these ones over here, or just a regular carbon steel, for me, the purpose of them is for drilling things like metal. And while there are maybe some of you that may disagree and may love using these for your woodworking, I've only used these for metal for the most part. And if you want to use them for woodworking in your shop, well, by all means, it's your shop and there's nothing wrong with that. But for my personal preference and my personal experience, as far as these goes for twist bits, I try to avoid them for your woodworking. Just to demonstrate what I'm talking about, I have a 1/4 inch, this one happens to be titanium coated, but twist bit installed in the drill press with a scrap piece of walnut that's about 1 inch thick. Now I'm using a backer board, which you should be using period with all of your woodworking to try to minimize tear out on your on the exit hole. But I just want to drill a hole here and show you what I mean with these twist bits. This is on the entrance wound, so to speak, and you can see the tear out around the hole. It's an aggressive bit. It's not a nice clean hole. And if I turn this around, you'll see that although this is a little cleaner, there is still tear out around the edge. Now, it's for that reason that I don't recommend it for woodworking. However, for drilling specific size holes, there is something that I do recommend for woodworking, and that would be the brad point bit. And here we have our typical brad point bit. Now this is a 3/8 brad point, and you can see in the center here the brad point, which actually, in my opinion, it increases accuracy. That brad point extends out past your cutting spurs that are these little points right here. And what it does is it centers the bit on your center punch. Now you can just center punch a little bit and that brad point will just find its center right in that punch. And these cutting spurs now will give a nice clean entry cut on the top of your piece. And as long as you have a backer board and you're not forcing the drill bit through and putting excessive pressure, it will give a nice clean exit wound. Now it still has your flutes along the side here to remove material, but for woodworking, this is my recommendation. For accuracy, for clean entrance and exits, this would be the bit. Now let's head over to the drill press and I'll show you on that same piece of scrap walnut what the brad point bit gives for results as opposed to what our twist bit gave. In order to make it a fair comparison, I've installed the same size bit, which would be 1/4 inch in the drill press. And once again, we'll drill right beside this and I'll show you the difference in the two. We have the backer board just like we did with the first one. And I'm just gonna go right beside it. That brad point enters into the wood to help you center. Those spurs really do a nice job of cutting the outside diameter of the hole to make it nice and clean. And as you come down through the exit wound, as I'm calling it, with those spurs really make for a clean cut. And I'll just show you this here. There would be the entrance wound, and you can really see the difference here with the twist bit being on the top. You can see the tear out, and on the bottom you can really see how crisp and clean those edges are. And I'll just flip it over, and once again you can see that the exit wound, although I did have a little bit of tear out here, which means I may have gone a little too quick, but on the top is the brad point and on the bottom is the twist. And if you're getting a bit of tear out like this, you may have exited just a little too quick, or your piece may have lifted off of your backer board and not provide it with enough support to give a clean cut. But you can definitely see here the difference between the two bits and the difference in quality of the hole. And if precision counts and cleanness of the hole counts, you really want to be going with a brad point for your woodworking. Well, the next type of bit I want to talk about is the auger bit. And the auger bit works a little differently than the other ones, where it has your screw or your point or your guide point or your gimlet, whatever you want to call it, at the end, which helps to pull the bit through. Now it still has the one spur and then the cutting edge there that really grabs and pulls it through the wood. I'm not going to say this doesn't have a place in woodworking. If you are making a, let's say, a chair and you need to drill out the holes for the legs to be placed into the chair and that sort of thing, this may help you to auger out or hog out the initial material to fine tune it for your chair legs. But as far as fine woodworking goes for, say, smaller things like furniture builds and that sort of thing, I really don't see the auger bit as having a purpose. Not for me anyway. I'm not going to say that you guys wouldn't find a purpose for it, because when it comes to woodworking, there's always a purpose for something, and as long as it's done safely, it really doesn't matter if you're happy with the results that you're getting. Now these here also have the same material removal process as a twist bit and a brad point. It's really no different, but they just have that really aggressive tip that grabs and really pulls through the wood. Now, for my purposes, if I was roughing in a basement that had 2x4 studding and I needed to place the electrical through, well, an auger bit might come in handy for that for me. But in the shop, for myself and my own purposes, this type of bit really doesn't have a purpose. However, seeing we're talking about roughing in and putting in electrical and that sort of thing, let's move on to the next type of bit, in this case, which would be the spade bit. So the spade bit. What is a spade bit? Well, a spade bit looks exactly like this. And this is, in my opinion, a rough construction style bit, and you may use it in your shop for woodworking. Again, let's just give an example where you might be cleaning out the hole to place a chair leg in the seat of a chair that you might be building. But as far as fine woodworking or, drilling accurate type holes in your work, this bit, in my opinion, isn't going to cut it for you. It is another very aggressive, very rough cut bit with a very poor quality hole both on the entrance and the exit. I don't know what to tell you about these bits other than they have that same brad point at the tip, which most manufacturers will claim is for accuracy. But if you're using a bit like this, I don't think you're too concerned on whether or not you're 1/64 of an inch out. That brad point does have a cutting edge ground into it. It also has edge spurs on it, which you can use, or which it does use to cut the outer diameter of the hole, supposedly for a cleaner cut. It's aggressive. It's extremely aggressive, and because of that, I don't recommend it in the shop for your woodworking projects. Once again, it's up to you, but I will just let you know it is out there. The nice thing about these bits is that in a lot of them, for the most part, the manufacturers do place the size. They stamp it right on that flat plate of your spade bit, which makes selection easier as opposed to twist bits or brad points where they are sometimes they are lasered into the shank of the bit or stamped, and as we get older, myself included, your eyesight goes and it's a struggle doing one of these trying to see the size. So it's nice with a spade bit that they have, for the most part, the sizes stamped on them. And those stamp sizes are the outer diameter of the hole that they will create. Just for fun, let's take this over to the drill press, and I'll put a smaller size in. Let's drill that same 3/4 block of walnut with it and just see what happens. Well, the smallest size of spade bit that I have is 3/8 of an inch, so I couldn't do a 1/4 inch comparison, but I will just show you how this cuts in here. That brad point hits the bit and starts cutting immediately, and then that aggressive nature of this spade bit as it comes through the opposite side of the piece. Now we'll just get rid of the sawdust here. Now you can see it did a half decent job here with getting a somewhat clean edge around it, and that would be, of course, the fact that this drill bit is brand new and it has those spurs to cut that edge. Now if we flip it over and I show you the exit wound, once again it is better than the twist bit, and surprisingly to me it actually gave a half decently somewhat clean edge, but still the edges on it and the cut is no comparison to the brad point. So proper bit for the proper job, and that's basically what it boils down to when it comes to these spade bits. Now remember what I said, and what I said was proper drill bit for the proper job. And that's where our next drill bit comes into play, which would be this guy. One of my favorites in the shop, and there are varying qualities of this type of bit, as there are for all bits, but this would be the Forstner bit. And the purpose of a Forstner bit is to drill a flat-bottomed hole. While you can drill a through hole with a Forstner bit, I'm sure you've seen me do it here on the show, it is not really the drill's purpose. It can and will do it and can do it with good results, but its purpose is to drill a flat-bottomed hole. That's its purpose. Something like placing a clock insert into some of your scroll work or that sort of thing. You need a recess. You saw me use Forstner bits when I made the coffee scoop. Flat bottom hole, once again, not a through hole. Now, these bits, as I said, come in different qualities, and they still have that spur on the outer edge that helps cut, and they almost work like an auger bit, where they have that cutting edge on the drill or on the bit, which really takes out that surface material, and it comes off in nice, almost cone-shaped curls, and that's the kind of cutting that you want from your bit. Now remember, these are low-speed bits. I see a lot of guys online that are firing these through at high RPM, and that's not their purpose. That's a good way to overheat the drill bit, take away the temper of that edge, cause it to burn out prematurely. It's also a good way to get hurt, because if that thing grabs at that high speed, you are going to have a problem. So for my purpose, I like to keep the speed a little lower on these bits and let them do their job and let them cut through. There's no rush. We all know that, right? Of course we know that. There's no rush in woodworking. And that is our next bit. That was the Forstner bit. So remember, flat bottom hole, Forstner. Well, those are basically the common types of drill bits that you will encounter in your shop. But I'd like to move on to a couple of accessories and specialty bits that you may or may not be aware of and you may or may not have a use for. And what we have here is a depth stop collar. And the way that these work is, instead of using the depth stop on your drill press, you have a collar. And what this does is you can place your collar. They're made for specific types or sizes rather of bit, and you will tighten up the set screw with the Allen key, which will coincide with the depth of the hole that you want to drill, and then from there you will carry on and drill, and this will butt up against your material and stop the hole from going any further. It is a form of depth stop, and while you can use it on your drill press, it's more commonly used on a hand drill. So it is just one of those accessories that you may consider if it suits your needs, and they're rather inexpensive, but just to let you know that they are out there and it is an option for you. The next bit I want to talk about, and this is more of a specialty bit, is a carbide bit. And guys, do not use this in your woodworking. If you are new to woodworking and you have one of these in your arsenal of drill bits, don't throw it out, but do not use it for your woodworking. These are designed to drill concrete. And what they have is a special carbide tip. They still have the flutes for dust removal, but you can really see here the difference. They've almost mimicked a brad point, but this is a hardened carbide tip, and they are mostly meant to take the abuse of a hammer drill, and you would hammer this into the concrete and it drills through. It is not a woodworking bit, but I wanted to put it out there to let the new people know that if you're having problems with your drill and you think, oh my gosh, my drill is dull, it might be one of these. And if it is one of these, don't use it for wood. Well, the next specialty bit that I'd like to talk about are these crazy looking things. And you may be looking at them thinking, what the heck is that? I'll just give you a close-up photo of one so you can see it a little better. And what these are plug cutters. And they are meant to cut specific size plugs for when you drill a hole and need to, say, add a screw or what have you. And then you want to plug that hole to fill it in so you don't see the screw that was used for joinery. And you basically cut a small piece of the stock you drill the small piece of the stock, and once you get it drilled, you can chip out this plug. Now these drill a nice tapered plug that you can hammer into a hole. And they do have their purpose. They're fairly inexpensive, and if at some point in time you get tired of purchasing the store-bought plugs from your big box store and you want to make your own, this might be a set of bits that you wish to pick up. The nice thing about it is that you are able to cut plugs that are of the same species of stock that you are working in, which makes it a little less visible, you might say. You have the ability to line the grain up in the exact same species. You could even cut it from the exact same board if you want to go that far, and that will allow you to really hide your joinery. So there you go. Those are plug cutting bits, and they are just another specialty bit that you could add to your drilling arsenal. Now with the plug cutter, once you get it glued into the hole, you can just use a flush cut saw to cut it flush and flat with your material, and it'll blend right in. So there you go. The next specialty bit that I'd like to talk about is the wheel or circle cutter, and that looks like this. You may have heard me refer to them as a knuckle buster, because if you get your hands too close to that bit while it's working, I guarantee you it's going to crack you in the knuckles, and you will regret the day that you stuck your hand that close to this bit. What this thing does is it has in the middle a twist bit, and that twist bit acts as a pilot or a guide, and on the outer edge it has an adjustable cutting blade or cutting bit, and as that bit rotates around in your drill press only guys, do not use this in a hand drill, but as it rotates around in the drill press, it slowly cuts down and wears through the material to cut a circle with, of course, a 1/4 inch hole in the middle, which is from the guide bit. Now, it kind of works in the same way as a scraper chisel works on a lathe, whereas the sharp edge and almost a burr kind of thing will take away that material. So you just need to do some adjustments on it to make the size hole or wheel that you need. Does it have its place in the woodworking shop? 100%. Will it bust up your knuckles if you get too close? 100%. You may want to use the fence to help hold the material when drilling it, and slow speeds, guys. Don't fire this thing through. It needs time to work. You want slow pressure cutting down through the stock, as well as a slow rotation of your drill press. Clamping your work in place for this is also probably a bonus for you. So there you go, your circle or wheel cutting. The next thing I want to touch on is this guy, and that would be the hole saw. I don't really use it a lot in the shop, however, I do use it. And the thing with a hole saw is it's really not designed to do fine woodworking. I'm not going to say it's aggressive, because it really isn't, but what it is it's rough. It is not, your gentle bit that is going to cut a perfectly nice, perfect edge hole the way that the spurs on a brad point will. It is a rough carpentry type thing that a lot of people would use for, say, the installation of a doorknob. You can cut discs if that is what you want, or cut out holes. But what I would recommend, if it's at all possible, is to cut halfway through and then flip your stock over and come from the back side and finish it off. What you'll find is that the deeper you get into the stock with a hole saw, because there is so much metal of the hole saw cutting edge, and there really is there's no flutes to remove sawdust. So what you end up with is that steel of the cutting edge and the sawdust in the hole mixing together, and you end up with a lot of heat, a lot of friction, and in most cases you will get smoking. Now don't be alarmed by the smoking. That's natural with hole saws and wood. It's just the nature of the beast. Hence why it is preferable to cut halfway through, flip it over, and then come from the back side. The other reason that is preferable is once you remove or extract the hole saw from your material, there will be half of the material still protruding from the end of the hole saw for you to get it out from the middle. The hole saw does have slots in the side that you can put a slot driver in and lever the extra stock out of the hole saw, but if there's half of its thickness sticking out, it makes it much easier to grab and remove. So there you go, the hole saw. It's just another one of those drill bits that if you're new to this, you see it in your arsenal, wonder what it's for, now you know. The very last specialty bit that I want to touch on very briefly is this guy, and that would be the step bit. Guys, if you have inherited or been given drill bits and you have one of these but you really don't know what it's for and you can't figure out why it's drilling these weird holes in your wood, it's because it's not for wood. Don't use it for it. What this is, it's a step bit where each level of that drill bit is a specific size hole. And if you were drilling through a piece of metal, let's say, oh, I don't know, in an electrical box or an electrical connection that way, and you needed a hole for an electrical connector, for whether it be for Romex wire or for a conduit or that sort of thing, this bit allows you to quickly step through the sizes of your bit. It's sort of like drilling its own pilot hole, and then it goes to the next size and the next size and the next size until you get the size that you want. It's a very cool bit and it's a very cool design, and for what it does, like I said, every bit has its purpose, and use that bit for that purpose. This bit is very cool and does a great job for its intended design, but for woodworking, no, don't do it. And there you have it. Drill bits. Guys, for as many processes and as many holes and as many ideas as you can come up with, there is a drill bit or drill bit accessory that is made to do that particular job. Have I touched on them all? No, I haven't. I haven't even come close. There are many, many more. Am I an expert of drill bits? No, I'm not. I don't want to ever make you think that I'm an expert of anything. I'm a guy that hangs in his shop and cuts up wood and shares it with you guys online. I just wanted to point out the common drill bits that the average person might find in their shop. And for a lot of beginners, they get a lot of drill bits handed to them, and in some cases they're not really sure what they do. And that's the intended purpose of this show, is to help those of you out there who are not sure to see what the drill bit looks like and know its intended purpose, to help you along the way in your quest to learn this awesome hobby of woodworking. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed today's show. I hope you've found it extremely informative. And if not, well, there's always next week, right? And that means that I hope you're going to join me next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.